The entire café went silent when she laughed. It wasn't a soft laugh. It was sharp, playful, edged with disbelief, and loud enough to turn heads beneath the warm mid-morning sunlight pouring through the wide glass windows. She tossed her hair over her shoulder, glanced at the tired man balancing a diaper bag and a tray of juice boxes, and said with a smirk, "Single dad like you can't please a woman." The words hung in the air like a challenge. He adjusted the little girl on his hip, leaned in slightly, and replied calmly, "Wanna bet?" Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet strength of people who refuse to give up, take a moment to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Stories like this deserve to be heard. It was a bright Tuesday morning in late spring, the kind where sunlight seems to polish the sidewalks and soften even the hardest faces. Rowan Hale hadn't slept properly in 3 years. Dark circles framed his steady gray eyes, and faint lines had formed around his mouth from exhaustion rather than age. At 32, he carried himself like a man twice his years, not because life had been cruel, but because it had been relentless. His daughter, Maris, was 4 years old and full of light. She wore mismatched socks, believed pigeons were undercover princesses, and insisted that strawberry yogurt tasted better if eaten with a blue spoon. She was Rowan's entire world. Across from him stood Selene, the café's new events coordinator, fresh from a marketing job in the city. She was sharp, articulate, stylish, and used to being admired. The café had hired her to revive business with daytime community events, and she ran the place with efficiency that bordered on ruthless. She believed in ambition, in polish, in partners who could keep up. And when she saw Rowan, hair slightly messy, shirt creased, speaking gently to his daughter while trying to pay for a spilled juice, she saw limitation. Rowan had once been a rising architect with a promising firm and a calendar packed with meetings. But 3 years earlier, on a cloudless afternoon much like this one, his wife had collapsed in their kitchen. An undiagnosed heart condition. One moment she was laughing. The next, silence. The kind of silence that never truly leaves. Grief rearranged Rowan's life overnight. He turned down promotions. He left his firm. He took freelance drafting jobs he could do from home. His days became a rhythm of daycare drop-offs, grocery lists, bedtime stories, and the constant hum of missing someone who wasn't coming back. He didn't date. He didn't socialize. He existed for Maris. Selene, who had overheard local gossip about the widowed dad who never moves on, found his devotion admirable but naive. She believed men needed partners to function fully. She believed single fathers were either overwhelmed or emotionally unavailable. So when she teased him that morning, it wasn't entirely malicious. It was rooted in assumption. But Rowan's quiet confidence unsettled her. Over the next few weeks, the café hosted daytime storytelling hours for children, organized by Selene. Rowan brought Maris every Thursday morning. He always sat in the back, laptop open, sketching building designs while keeping one eye on his daughter. He packed snacks, wiped sticky fingers, and listened carefully when Maris tugged his sleeve to show him a drawing. Selene began to notice details she hadn't before. The way Rowan knelt to Maris's level instead of towering over her. The way he never checked his phone while she spoke. The way his exhaustion never translated into impatience. One late morning, as sunlight streamed across the wooden floorboards, Maris tripped near the craft table and burst into tears. Before anyone else reacted, Rowan was there. He scooped her up, checked her knees, brushed back her curls, and whispered reassurance until her sobs faded into hiccups. Selene watched something shift in the room. The other mothers looked at Rowan differently, not as a burdened single parent, but as something rare. Later that day, Selene found herself replaying his steady response. She remembered her own father, always traveling, always distracted, always promising to attend events he missed. Rowan was the opposite of absence. Still, pride kept her guarded. One afternoon, Selene approached Rowan under the bright canopy of outdoor tables. She asked about his work, expecting a modest answer. Instead, he showed her detailed blueprints for a community center he was designing pro bono for a low-income neighborhood. His sketches weren't just technical, they were thoughtful. Windows placed to capture maximum daylight. Open spaces for parents and children to gather. A rooftop garden. Architecture shapes how people feel, he said softly. Light matters. Space matters. Selene felt her earlier judgment thinning. But life rarely softens in a straight line. That same week, Rowan lost a major freelance contract. The firm restructuring meant fewer remote opportunities. Bills tightened. Anxiety crept back into his evenings. He stayed up after Maris slept, staring at numbers that refused to stretch far enough. Yet each morning, under clear blue skies, he still packed her lunch with a handwritten note folded inside. Selene noticed the change in his posture before he ever mentioned it. The tension in his shoulders. The quiet calculations behind his eyes. She overheard him asking about part-time drafting positions at a nearby office. Something tugged at her conscience. She had built her identity around independence. She prided herself on never needing rescue, never depending on anyone. But watching Rowan carry so much without complaint stirred a new understanding of strength. One sunny Saturday, the café hosted a daytime fundraiser for the very community center Rowan had designed. Selene had organized it impulsively after discovering his volunteer project. She didn't tell him beforehand. She simply set up tables, hung bright banners, and filled the space with local families. When Rowan arrived with Maris, sunlight catching the dust in the air like glitter, he stopped in his tracks. On the largest wall hung a printed rendering of his design. Beneath it, building light together. He looked at Selene, confusion and gratitude warring in his expression. She hadn't teased him that day. She hadn't smirked. Instead, she explained that she believed in spaces that gave people second chances. Throughout the morning, donations trickled in. Not massive sums, but enough to make progress tangible. Maris ran between tables handing out cookies, proud of her father in a way only children can be. For the first time since his wife's passing, Rowan felt something unfamiliar rising alongside grief. Hope. The fundraiser didn't erase his struggles overnight. Contracts were still uncertain. Parenting was still exhausting. Grief still visited during quiet afternoons when sunlight hit the kitchen just right. But something fundamental shifted. He wasn't invisible anymore. Selene began spending more time with Maris during cafe events, teaching her how to fold paper cranes. She found herself asking Rowan questions not out of curiosity, but genuine interest. What had his wife been like? What had he learned about love through loss? Rowan answered honestly. He spoke of partnership not as perfection, but as patience. Of love not as performance, but presence. Selene realized she had confused charisma with capability. She had mistaken polish for depth. Weeks turned into months. The community center secured enough funding to break ground. Rowan was offered a stable position overseeing its design and construction. It wasn't glamorous, but it was meaningful, and close to home. On a clear afternoon at the construction site, sunlight pouring over steel beams and fresh concrete, Rowan lifted Maris so she could see the open structure taking shape. Selene stood nearby, wind brushing strands of hair across her face. She remembered her teasing words from that first morning and felt almost embarrassed by them. Yet Rowan never brought it up again. He didn't need to prove anything. His life spoke for him. One day, as they stood watching children play in the cafe courtyard, Selene finally asked him why he had responded so confidently that morning. Rowan smiled faintly, eyes on his daughter. He said he wasn't interested in pleasing everyone. He was interested in loving well. And that, he believed, required patience, vulnerability, and the courage to stay even when things were hard. Selene felt her defenses crumble quietly, like ice melting under steady sun. She had built walls from ambition and fear of disappointment. Rowan had built resilience from loss and responsibility. And somehow, in the full brightness of ordinary days, their paths converged. Their relationship didn't erupt into fireworks. It unfolded slowly, shared coffees after events, collaborative planning sessions, gentle laughter under clear skies. Maris took Selene's hand one morning without hesitation, and that simple gesture carried more weight than grand declarations ever could. Rowan didn't need to lean in and challenge anymore. He simply lived. The café flourished under Selene's leadership. The community center rose brick by brick, filled with light exactly as Rowan had envisioned. And Maris grew surrounded by adults who showed up. If this story is touching your heart, if you've ever judged someone too quickly or been judged yourself, take a moment now to like, comment, and share. Your engagement helps stories of quiet strength reach more people who need them. Because here's the truth that morning laughter never understood: strength isn't loud. Devotion isn't flashy. And love doesn't disappear just because life rearranges it. On the day the community center officially opened, sunlight flooded through tall windows, illuminating murals painted by local children. Rowan stood near the entrance, watching families step inside. Maris tugged at his sleeve, pointing excitedly at the rooftop garden above. Selene approached him, no teasing smile, no sharp edges, just sincerity. She didn't need to say she had been wrong. Her actions had already rewritten the story. Before the ribbon was cut, Rowan glanced at her and quietly repeated the words from months ago, softer this time, filled not with challenge but gratitude. "Wanna bet?" And this time, the answer wasn't a laugh. It was belief. Special request: comment, light builds love, if you believe kindness and second chances can change lives. As the doors opened and families stepped into a space born from loss, perseverance, and unexpected connection, Rowan realized something profound. He had never needed to prove he could please someone. He only needed to remain true to the love he already carried. And in the bright, ordinary daylight of a second chance, that was more than enough.